few of our employees who have done some outstanding things and have been recognized for it on a state level. Keisha Lara. Keisha, if you could stand up, please. I think you all know Keisha. She works in our unsafe housing program. Keisha was recently awarded the Building Officials Association of South Carolina's Member of the Year.
Wow.
Statewide. So again, and I know, again, everyone knows Keisha and we know how hard she works and what she does for Richland County, but it's great that she's being recognized statewide and with this type of recognition. So again, thank you, Keisha, for what you do. Keep it up, and we appreciate you. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, Mike Smith. Mike, if you could stand up. I think you all know Mike as well. Mike's a longtime building inspector with the Building Inspections Department. And from the same organization, the Building Officials Association of South Carolina, Mike has been awarded the Building Official of the Year award for the state. So, again, it's great to have them here and do what they do, but it's really important to all of us and for the county to have the recognition statewide. So we appreciate both Mike and Keisha for what you guys do for the county. Thank you. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, our fleet management program, which has been in operation under its current system for several years and has consistently won awards on a national level. The North American Fleet Association has awarded our fleet management program a spot in the top 100 public sector fleets of the nation, and in fact we hit number 65 on a nationwide scale. So again, that is an accomplishment for our support services department, which oversees the fleet management program, and we want to thank them and what they've done for the county as well. Okay, and that completes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Next, we have the report of the Clerk of Council, Ms. Onley.
Yes, sir. I have a couple reminders. A reminder about tomorrow's Public Works Luncheon. That's at 11:30 out at Powell Road. And then the next item is the Charters of Freedom dedication ceremony. That is next Thursday, the 26th at 2 p.m. out in front of the administration building. If there is rain that day, we'll move the ceremony inside to council chambers. And then my last item is the upcoming budget meetings. May 19th, which is this Thursday, is the public hearing. May 26th, the second reading of the grants portion, and then June 2nd is second reading of the non-grants items.
Can you also add the next week, 24th?
I was
Okay.
gonna say, and we had a request to add a work session next Tuesday, the 24th, at 4 o'clock.
On 45.
Okay.
That completes my report.
That concludes your report?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Onley. Next, we'll have the report of the chair. We do have a personnel matter, but since Mr. Dwight Hannah wasn't involved in our search committee meeting, we're going to hold that item in the committee. So, and that concludes my report. Next, we have open and closing of public hearing. Item 12A, an ordinance amending the Richland County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 7, Boards, Commissions, Committees, Section 2-332, Boards, Commissions, and Committees created, Subsection L, Richland County Business Service Center Appeals Board, Paragraph 2, Membership, so as to revise the membership requirements of the Business Service Center Appeals Board. That public hearing is open. No one signed up to speak. That public hearing is now closed. Next, we have approval of consent items. Item 13. Got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. This is third reading. All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Rose, Malinowski, Dixon, Jackson, Pierce, Rush, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning.
Any opposed? Like sign. That motion carries. Next, we have third reading items. Item 14, An ordinance amending the fiscal year 2015-16 general fund annual budget to appropriate $62,751 of general fund balance to fund the cost of the voter registration and elections commission associated to conduct the special elections for the vacated District 10 seat. This is third reading item. Chair entertain a motion. Mr. Malinowski.
He need to get it, things up for discussion.
Okay, Chair entertain a motion.
I move approval at that amount.
I got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. Discussion. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Isn't it the Election Commission's job to run elections for Richland County?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Then on page 27, on the third bullet point, when it says that the election, it talks about council insisting that the work of the employees of the election office be included in the election cost that they run for other entities, yet they included the cost for Richland County. So I don't understand why that cost should be in there. We're not another entity. That's part of their job. The employees are there, and the particular department already receives funds for those employees. So it seems like that would be paying them twice.
Mr. McDonald?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think Mr. Malinowski makes a valid point. And I believe Mr. Self is here. And at the council's request at the last hearing or the last reading of this item, you had asked that he attend to answer questions. But just to make a comment on Mr. Malinowski's point, that is correct. If we're doing an election for a municipality, for example, and there are personnel costs incurred by existing personnel, but it's done or provided to another municipality or jurisdiction, then certainly, yes, there's a valid reason to request reimbursement. And I think Mr. Malinowski's point is if the election is not for a municipality or another jurisdiction, but for Richland County, an election that Richland County, which in this case is what's occurring, is for the county itself, then is there any need to include that number in what would need to be reimbursed, if you will, or added to the funding when those positions are already in the budget? And again, I think that's a valid point, Mr. Malinowski, and I'll let Mr. Self add to that, if Mr. Chair, if you would like to hear from him.
Members of council, at council's bequest.
Mr. Self,
Yes.
if you don't mind, just your department name and.
My name is Samuel J. Self, Director of the Richland County Elections and Voter Registration
Thank you.
Office. Some time ago, in my appearance before council, some council members brought up the whole question of whether we should include the cost of the election staff in elections going forward. I think you brought that up, Mr. Malinowski. And Mr. Driggers and members of my staff got together and worked out a formula. And they put that formula together based on the amount of hours that members of staff would put into the election. And we came up with a figure of $18,500. I do agree with you that that cost should not be in this budget. I do agree with you.
Okay, well, thank you, and that's what I was just wondering.
Okay.
So, okay.
I do.
Okay, then can we remove that from this particular
No
budget?
question.
It's not in the 62, though.
It's not in there.
No, I think that
No, it's not in the
Oh, it's
62.
not?
It would
What-
have been in the 86.
What's in this page here?
62.
Page 30,
62.
all these red line figures.
Items that we added to the budget. I think the first one was about $1,099. That was the advertising fee for this special 10 election. The other fees were basically the overtime cost to the staff, FICA, and some other costs. It came to a total of $7,244. That's the cost that my staff would probably include in the budget. When we worked with finance, we came up with this 18,500, but it should be, as you stated, that $6,500 that we brought to council earlier.
Well, then, Mr. Self, what's happened here that I have, and I guess you've got the same thing there, it's got overtime, part-time wages, FICA, retirement, all those are crossed out, and all those dollar figures are crossed out, and now we just have a lump sum total for county voter registration and election staff of $18,500 going
Right,
across.
that's the amount that you're calling into question, and I'm in total agreement with you that that amount should not be in the Special 10 budget.
Okay, and why do we use the temporary employment agency?
We call it that, but it is not. It is workers that we use to run elections. When we get 2 weeks out, they help us with the absentee voting. They help us in the office in terms of changing and correcting addresses of persons who recently moved into the county.
So these are actually like part-time employees?
They are. They will work
Okay.
maybe 20 days, 15 days, and they will be let go.
Okay, and when you, I guess I'm trying to figure out this total figure down here, 45,896. What,
Dealing with that figure at this point, we should be dealing with the 34,000 because we've dropped to 18,000. 18,000 will translate back to $7,244. Hence, we're back at $34,600.44.
okay, I guess I don't see that here then.
You don't,
Okay.
because it's not. I'll tell you where it is.
You got it? Okay, yeah, we can see that later, I guess, but let me go over here to, on the actual precinct names and the polling locations. Have you got the agenda like we do, so it'd be on page 32 of this agenda, if that's...
I don't have the agenda, but I think I can answer your
It's
question.
this chart right here.
Okay.
Okay? And it says that the polling locations, and it says there was an updated Wildwood move to Polo Park, and it gives the exact same location. But will there be two separate and distinct buildings, or is it all going to be in the one place?
On that particular one, I think that would be St. John Newman School or Church. We cannot use that one on this date, so we had to move it up Polo Road to the, I think, the park.
Right, they both say Polo Road Park, 1250 Polo Road.
So we're
So is
gonna
it all
move
going to
those-
be in one?
We're going to move the folk who would normally vote at St. John Newman because we can't use it. They're having
Right.
an affair there. We're going to move it up to Polo Road Park.
Right, but my question is, if you said 2020 Hampton and this was the original polling place for voters, and now you're moving something from off of UG Street to here, is everybody coming into this same big room to vote?
They will be going to Polo Road Park to vote. I don't know how many voters are in that particular precinct. I don't think it's, I don't know how many, but they will be given, there will be signage at St. John Newman School directing them to Polo Road Park.
I mean, I guess cut to the point I'm trying to get here is that you've got X number of workers assigned to there. You've got 5 for the one and 4 for the other. If they're all in the same place, why do you need to have double the amount of employees and not just the one set?
Well, when you combine a precinct, you don't lose workers. You need those workers to service the people who will come. Let's just say that Polo Road Park has about 900. St. John Newman has 6. So we've gone up to about 1,600 people. According to the State Election Commission, if a precinct has 1,350 people, we should appoint 9 managers, 9 poll managers.
Okay, and my last question, I believe, for you is, and you weren't here last week to answer it, and I guess you didn't maybe get it, but why for poll managers' assistants do we say that they're 16 or 17 years old? Why aren't they advertised as, hey, we need these assistants, anybody can apply?
I don't think that anybody who serves as a poll manager assistant is 16 or 17 years old.
It says in here, one 16 or 17-year-old assistant may be appointed for every 2 poll managers.
Maybe. But we're not going with that. If a poll clerk has someone who wants to get some experience in the election world, then we will invite those people in, and we give that as direction.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Self, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Ms. Dickerson.
Mrs. Self, you know, I talk to you all the time on, you know, when these figures come before us and we have to be accountable to the public for them, that these figures should be really, really vetted before they come into this chamber. Because just like Mr. Malinowski picks up on all these things and myself, can you imagine what the general public is going to do?
Yes.
Now, when we start to discuss the fact that we have this overlap in personnel, that was a big issue. When we look at the fact that when, if I took out the $18,000, whatever, I'm coming up with 44. So I don't know whether the thing that I'm struggling with is whether or not the figures that I have before me are the correct, exact figures that is required to put on this special election, that you have the proper employees, personnel to actually do it. I mean, so I think that's the problem I generally struggle with, whether or not the figures have been audited to a point when it comes here that these are the actual figures. And if not, how do we recoup the dollars that we give if they come in less? I mean, so this is basically a concern. I'm sorry, but those are my concerns. So, do you actually need $62,751, or do you need $18,000 less, or?
To
I don't
run
know.
the primary on May the 31st,
Yeah.
we're going to need right at $34,640.44. That's projected,
Projected?
yes.
And so where the difference between the 62, and now you looking at in the event that we have runoffs and
In
all
the
those
event that you
things?
have a runoff, you add $29,210 to that.
To that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay, all right, okay.
Okay, you done, Ms. Dickerson?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Mr. Jackson.
Oh, thank you. That was just my question. What's the total amount you need to run this election, this special election, efficiently? Or by state law?
62,000 plus that is in the agenda for this evening.
What's on the agenda?
62,751.
Okay, that's what you need.
That's what we need.
Thank you very much.
Now, the 18,000 was not my idea.
I understand. I then made it clear, something that came to you. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Oh, may I
Miss-
just one more point for point of clarification?
Clarification.
Point of clarification. You said 34,000 to run the special election, right?
The primary.
The primary.
Yes, ma'am.
And the 29,000 is
If
a
there is a-
projected number if. So how many weeks does that take between the two of them?
2.
2 weeks?
Okay.
So if you don't have a runoff and you got my $29,000, are they gonna be put back in my general fund?
Well, we ain't gotten anything yet, so
I'm just saying, if I
Miss-
give you this
Miss-
62.
Miss
Wait a
Dickerson.
minute.
Miss
I'm saying
Dickerson,
if I
it's
give
just
you-
clarification. I can put you down.
That's clarification. I wanna make sure that I get my money back.
You'll get your money back. It won't be appropriated.
Well, when we appropriate it, I want my money back if we don't
Yes,
have a
ma'am.
special election.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. Just to summarize everything here, all right? $62,751 does not include any $18,000. That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
All right. The only concern I have at this point, Mr. McDonald, is the way the ordinance is written. All right? In effect, what we're doing is we're amending the budget to provide him $62,000.
Right.
All right? If we do not have a runoff, there is nothing in the ordinance that pertains, I don't believe, to us. He will still have $62,000.
Right.
Why doesn't the ordinance address that?
Mr. Pierce.
If there is a runoff, that the rest of the money wouldn't be needed.
Yeah, we have talked about that, Mr. Pierce. In fact, I think at every vote and every discussion we've had, we've discussed that. Now, how you include that in the ordinance, I don't know, but we have agreed, and I think Mr. Self has concurred, that if there is not a runoff, that second allotment of money, that 29,000 or approximately 30,000, would not be made available for expending on other items, but would go back to the general fund, and that's what we said all along.
Okay, that's what you said, but that's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance says that he gets $62,751. Why doesn't
Right.
the ordinance say he gets 34,000 whatever for the primary election, and if a runoff is required, he will receive an additional
29.
29? Why doesn't it read that way?
Yeah, I think he could probably, I'd have to defer to the budget writers and Mr. Driggers to confirm it, but I think he could write it that way. But I think both numbers, whether they're together or split out like you just said, would need to be included in case there is that runoff. Then the money would be available. But I think it could be written that
That
way.
would be what it said.
That's what
It
it
would say,
said.
I
this amount
agree.
of money for the primary,
I agree.
and if necessary, this amount of money for the runoff.
I think you can do that.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. Oh, wait a minute, it's my motion.
Right.
Can I amend my motion?
Go
Can I amend
ahead.
my motion?
You can make amendment.
I would amend the motion to have the ordinance specify the original primary and then the additional funds, if necessary, for
Second.
for a total amount not to exceed $62,751.
Okay, that's the amendment to the motion. It's been properly second. Continued discussion. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Self, I had one other thing here, and I noticed throughout this budget, it has different asterisks at different items. Yet I never did find any type of a key showing what those asterisks are for. Can you tell us what they're for? Are they referring to somewhere else that we don't have?
Basically, if it's 2, then it's referring to election day workers. If it's 3, it's referring to office staff, based on what I'm looking at.
Okay. And I guess I'm still not getting these final figures here then based on what I'm hearing. We've got a total for the primary of $45,896.44. Now, is that the total of everything down this column?
That's the total of everything down that column.
Well, but then if you, based on what you said, we're supposed to take away the 18,500.
And it's supposed to be supplanted with $7,244.
Oh, okay. And that's for what, these temporary workers?
That office, county, overtime. FICA,
7,000, how much?
244.
244. It'd be nice if we had a final version of this somewhere. I don't have it, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Mr. Livingston.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, call for the question.
Second.
Got a motion to call for the question. It's been properly second. Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. The question on the table is to approve the amended motion is to approve the budget and separate out or define that the payments for the runoff election and, for the initial special election, and then if needed, the runoff election. So those payments should be split out.
The primary and the
Correct,
runoff.
Baker? Okay. All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Rose, Malinowski, Dixon, Jackson, Pierce, Rush, Livingston, Dickerson.
Any opposed, like sign?
Opposed, Manning.
That motion carried.
Chair, I want to change my vote to the nay side because I can't get these numbers to add up. Thank you.
We need to reconsider it, or when is the election?
It's second, no, it's at
It's
first.
third reading, right?
This is
Yeah,
third
this is
reading.
third reading.
Make a motion to reconsider.
Vote we-
Got a motion to reconsider this item. Can I get a second?
I second it.
It's been properly second. All in favor of reconsideration signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That motion fails. Thank you. Next, we'll have second reading items. Item 15, an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2015-16 general fund annual budget to appropriate $1,528,000 of unassigned fund balance to cover additional operating costs for general fund departments. Chair, entertain a motion.
Move approve for discussion, Mr. Chair.
I got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. Discussion. Mr. Pierce.
We don't approve this, what happens? We're in violation of the law, is that correct? We cannot end a year with a budget deficit?
Well, I don't think, no, the general fund cannot end the year in a deficit. If these were not approved, the overall general fund would not end in a deficit. Now, these individual departments would,
That's what I was
But-
getting at.
but they're not going to take the entire general fund into a deficit situation.
So my question then is, if we would not run a deficit, why do we have to appropriate out of fund balance at a critical time when our fund balance is at an all-time low? Why do we have to appropriate money from the fund balance to cover a deficit that would take care of itself?
It wouldn't take care of itself.
No, it's not. Well, it depends on what you mean by take care of
And
itself.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just asking a...
No, that's a good question. By taking care of itself, if what you mean is the deficits in, for example, the detention center will be ultimately absorbed by what is left over in the entire general fund from other departments, then yes, that is true. Now, in the end, at the end of the fiscal year, and when the audit is completed, it's going to show, if you do nothing, it's going to show the coroner, the detention center, and the council services budget as having overspent. And so they will show, again, individually deficits for the end of the year, but the entire general fund will not.
So why is that bad?
I think from a financial management perspective, it is not good to have any budget in a deficit. And I'll defer to Mr. Driggers and tell you maybe in more detail or more clearly why that's not a good thing.
This is a second reading tonight, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, this is going to also require a public hearing, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. I will not tie up council time tonight, but I just would, before we just raise our hands and appropriate $1.5 million out of a fund balance that is severely impaired, I think would be a correct way of putting it. I just would like for us to take another look at this. Let's see if there's some other way to avoid just appropriating out of fund balance. Because that's what we've been doing since 2008, and that's,
Yeah, I agree.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Mr. Manning,
She was first.
Ms. Dickerson?
Oh, I was first. I would support it for tonight, and then if next time we can probably find some additional funding so that we can figure out another way where we can get this $1.5 million, just to keep it moving. I would support it. Maybe you all can look at some other departments who have some floating funds that we can put this in, so maybe we can look at a different way.
Yeah.
But I do know we need it.
Yeah, I just want to clarify because it's late in the fiscal year, and to be honest, I don't know at this point, with still some time remaining in the operating period for the fiscal year, I don't know that we will go out and find $1.5 million that we don't know will be spent, because again, we're in May, we've still got a full month of the fiscal year before the fund or the fiscal year ends. So I would be reluctant to try and guess where those funds may ultimately end up, or what may not be spent at the end of the fiscal year. Now, again, Mr. Driggers may have a better handle on that, and I'm sure he does, than I do. And if he's got any ideas, I would welcome them. But and we'll do that. We'll look. But I'm just saying, I would not be optimistic in trying to tell you tonight, though, yes, we can come back and say we found $1.5 million that we're not going to spend.
I still have the floor, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Pierce raised the point, what will happen if the detention center have a deficit going in? Will they
Right.
have to start dipping in their next year's fund to cover some of that?
No,
How
no,
would we
ma'am.
do that? I mean, so if they overspent, they're over budget, how are they gonna make it up if we don't take it out of our general fund? You know what I mean?
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Driggers can't find any other money?
Let me say it. Let me try one more time, and then I'll ask Mr. Driggers to come up. In either case, no matter how you deal with it, it's going to hit the fund balance. And what I mean by that is, if you take it out of the fund balance today, you're taking out $1.5 million from the fund balance. If you don't take it out of the fund balance today, if you let the deficits hit and have those deficits absorbed by any unspent money from other areas, that's $1.5 million that would have gone into fund balance that will not, because they're making up those deficits. So ultimately, in the end, the result is the same.
Okay, I got you. You don't know how that's good.
Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. Mr. Manning.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we divide the question into three parts: the coroner department, the detention center, and council services.
That's the motion on the table.
Second.
It's been properly seconded. Are they separate numbers for?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? Oh, one second. I've got Mr. Malinowski. I got you down, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Malinowski.
Okay. Well, my question is that based on the deficit that the jail, the detention center is coming forward with, and I don't have a date on this paperwork, but it was the bond court process revision that stated on paper that we were going to save all this money. I think $218,000. So we took $218,000 from the jail, gave it to the, I guess it was the chief magistrate, and now we've got the jail coming back saying we got this deficit because you took our money to the chief and gave it to the chief magistrate. So can somebody go back and explain why this didn't work? I know the chief magistrate was here, but I guess when he's done shaking hands, he had to go again.
Okay. I didn't know that he had gone, Mr. Malinowski.
I didn't
But yeah,
see him looking around.
Yeah, but you're right. The idea and the 24-hour bond court was a pilot program to be tested this current fiscal year, and it's the end of the year of the pilot program is coming up at the end of this fiscal year. The idea, and I think the program was, the premise was, yes, it will save money at the detention center, and therefore it would be safe to fund it during the pilot program from the detention center's budget, which we did. Now, I think the actual result has been, yes, it has helped move individuals through the detention center more quickly, but it has not saved anywhere near the $218,000 that it was hoped or anticipated to have done when the chief magistrate presented it back a year ago. You're correct.
Okay.
Okay, another question I have is part of the funding shortage that we were told by the detention center director in his write-up was that they'd have no more funds for several items, and one of them was to include polygraph services for new employees. Do we not have anyone in Richland County government, some entity that does polygraphs? And what I'm getting at is I don't know,
Not sure, Mr. Malinowski.
well, I thought the sheriff's department might.
I would,
So you-
I would imagine they do.
So
but I-
you mean to tell me that we're making another entity go out and hire private services to do a function that I would hope would be done by our own people in-house? I don't know what the dollar figure is, but it's certainly got to be, I would think, a waste of money. I'd like that to be looked into in the future.
Sure, absolutely.
And my other question on this whole matter, when it comes to the council services budget, and I'm looking at page 41 of our current agenda. District 10, the budget. Everyone else in here is $7,000, I believe, except for the chair, it has $7,700 for the budget. But it shows District 10 is a $10,020.55 budget. Why does District 10 have a budget in excess of $3,000 over all other council members for discretionary funds?
That I cannot answer, Mr. Malinowski.
And anybody?
Daniel Rodriguez, Finance Director. Mr. Malinowski, what happens throughout the year is that the Director of Council Services makes the decision on whether transfers of budgets are necessary. And during this year, $3,000 was transferred from other places within the council budget.
For overspending, obviously.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Let's first of all take up, and my apologies, let's take up the action which is on the table to divide the question
Yeah, look, Mr.
concerning that.
Chair. Overall, I mean, Malinowski was first, and I was next. before
Okay.
you go into- yeah, go ahead then.
Well, actually, it was Livingston and Jackson. but-
Okay, good, go ahead then.
All right, Livingston.
Mr. McDonald, those specific budgets that were overrun budgets, I know there were overruns in specific areas that you identified in those budgets. Are there areas in those budgets where they were underrun so we can compensate for some of the funding? Can we make sure we look and see whether or not there's other areas within those budgets?
You're talking about within the individual budgets?
Yes.
That-
Because I think that's one way you can recoup some of the funds.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mr. Livingston, but that has been taken into account. So in other words, when the projection was that the budgets would be overspent by the end of the year, it didn't just look at the line items.
You look at the entire
It looked
budget?
at the entire budget, yes, sir.
Thank you. That's my question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Livingston. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the night court, was there an overall savings?
Mr. Jackson, I believe when the chief magistrate was here and talked about this, or maybe it was the detention center director, I think it was, actually his estimate of what had been saved as a result of the program, I believe, was around $5,000 to $10,000. So it was fairly minimum.
But there was some savings. I just wonder if there was some savings. Was it,
Yes, according to the detention center, yes.
That was sound confusing. Was the savings a plus? I mean, did we spend so much money to have such a minimum saving that it really didn't work? Or
I believe the conclusion, Mr. Jackson, was strictly from a financial perspective. We funded the program at over $200,000. We saved $10,000. Now that's $10,000 is not on top of saving a $200,000 that we spent. It was we spent $200,000. We saved $10,000. So I guess net it cost $190,000. Yes.
109,000. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. Okay, and just but all three departments is included for funding we need for this $1.5 million, right?
All three are included in the amount, you mean? Yes, all three,
That means all three needs it. Thank you.
yes, make up the total.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Mr. McDonald, for these three departments, these are fluid numbers that change, that could change?
These are projections, Mr. Rose, and again, until we get to June 30 and the book's closed, then sure, there will be some change.
Why wouldn't we take this up when it gets closer to that deadline period, since the numbers are fluid?
Well, I think the time constraint at this point is to do 3 readings. If we start much later than this, because this is the last meeting in May, you got 2 meetings in June, and there would not be time to get 3 readings for a budget amendment.
Readings, if we find the money, you cannot do third reading.
Okay. You got? Okay, the motion on the table is to divide the question. Any more discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. That motion fails. The motion we have was the motion was for approval.
Yeah, second reading.
Second reading. Any more discussion? Mr. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 40 of 218, and I don't know that I saw with the other 2 in there, but since we didn't divide the question, I'll bring it up for all of them. For the plans of action for reducing, the equivalent of page 40 for the coroner's office and the detention center. Can you refer to me the equivalent pages in our agenda? It would be reflective of like 40 with a plan from say back in early February for corrective action.
Mr. Manning, there is no written plan like there is on page 40 for, I believe that refers to the clerk of council's budget or the council services budget. There is no similar written plan for detention center or for the coroner.
Okay, so for out of all of them in item 15, there really would just be that page to go through to talk about the level of success that we had for the 9 items listed there.
Yes, if you want to talk in that level of detail, yes.
Well, that level of detail's in the public packet, so I think that might be appropriate. Well, seeing as how the will of nobody but me is to do that, I'll sleep and pray on that for third reading. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Any more discussion? All in favor of approval signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Division. All in favor of approval signify by raising your hand. The motion was to approve the $1,528,000. All in favor of approval signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Dixon, Jackson, Rush, Dickerson.
Any opposed, like sign?
Opposed, Rose, Malinowski, Pierce, Livingston, Manning.
That motion fails. All right, Chair, entertain a motion.
That was
No, I'm sorry.
motion.
The motion fails. You're right.
So we're not gonna approve.
So there's no appropriation at all. Okay.
That's correct.
All right, item 16, developing a,
Mr. Chairman, may I say for the record also, there will be no going through those 9 items that I thought would happen on third reading.
all right, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
All right, item 16, developing a multi-county park with Fairfield County, authorizing the execution and delivery of an agreement governing the multi-county park, authorizing the inclusion of certain property located in Richland County in the multi-county park, authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement and other related matters. Chair, entertain motion.
Move approval, Mr.
Got a
Chairman.
motion for approval. It's
Second.
been properly second. Any discussion?
Yep.
Ms. Dickerson.
This is the one that I said that, I'm looking at it and I just got the information on it. And I have not had a chance to go through this document because it was just handed to me. And I'm going to vote no on it tonight, and maybe the next time when I get an opportunity to review it, I might approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Any more discussion? Mr. Manning?
I'd like to add to that motion, if I may, that council move forward, that the county move forward with the second reading of this, with the changes as discussed in executive session. As a citizen of Forest Acres, I am proud to support the town's effort to redevelop the former Cardinal Newman site on Forest Drive.
Second.
Okay, was that a friendly amendment to the motion? Okay, a friendly amendment. Does the maker of the motion?
I'll accept.
Does the person who made the second
Yeah.
accept that? Okay. That's the friendly amendment. Any more discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
That motion carries. Next, we have item 17, authorizing the conversion of a 1996 fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes arranged by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and Bose Corporation, and other matters related thereto. Chair, entertain a motion. Got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have the report of the Economic Development Committee. Mr. Livingston.
Mr. Chair, item 18, a resolution authorizing execution, delivery of a memorandum of understanding by and among Richland County, South Carolina, and the state of South Carolina, and a company known as Project Giant and other matters for related. Committee's recommendation for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Livingston.
Mr. Chair, item 18B, authorizing expansion and boundaries of the I-77 Portal Regional Industrial Park jointly developed with Fairfield County to include certain real properties located in Richland County, the execution and delivery of a credit agreement to provide for special source revenue credits to Haven, excuse me, Haven Campus Community, Columbia LLC, and other related matters. And also, along with that, to bring back, first of all, by title only for first reading, and bring back prior to second reading, a resolution as discussion executive session regarding the memorandum of reference to this project. That was the committee's recommendation, Mr. Chair.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I request division on this vote.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor of that recommendation signify by raising your hand.
You're going to division right now.
No, no. I was going to.
I'm sorry, I meant show of hand. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not division. Yeah.
Well, I was just asking for it.
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah.
This show of hand on
Show
the
of hand.
You got a motion for that? That's what you're asking for? Or you're just asking
You
for
were
it?
going to vote because.
But he said
you're
division.
going to
Okay.
vote verbally. I
Okay,
want a
okay.
show of hands. I want the vote recorded.
Oh, yeah, we're recording the vote, okay. The committee's recommendation was for approval. All in favor of that recommendation signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Rush, Livingston, Manning.
Any opposed, like sign.
Opposed, Rose, Malinowski, Dixon, Jackson, Pierce, Dickerson.
That motion fails. Next, we have, I'm sorry, Mr. Livingston.
That completes the report of the Economic Development Committee, Mr. Chair.
All right. Yeah. Next, we have the report of the Rules and Appointments Committee. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 19, notification of appointments to the Township Auditorium Board. The committee recommends to appoint Mr. Antoine Orlando Seawright.
Mr. Rose.
Mr. Chair,
You heard the committee's recommendation. Mr. Rose.
Chair, I'd like to nominate Miss Ray Borders-Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Any more discussion? Mr. Pierce.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Mr. Jack Mills.
All right, we'll go one by one. All in favor of Mr. Jack Mills?
Mr. Chairman, how many openings are there on the board?
One.
It says 3.
Well, I question that of the clerk, and that was a mistake. They were indicating that there were 3 applicants, but there's only one
This-
opening.
Oh, my.
All right,
Well, let's see what happens. So you just get one vote?
Yep, one vote.
Thank you, guys.
All in favor of Mr., and we're going one by one. All in favor of Mr. Mills signify by raising your hand.
Pierce.
All in favor of Ms. Borders Gray signify by raising your hand.
Rose.
All in favor of Mr. Seawright signify by raising your hand.
Malinowski, Jackson, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning.
That, okay, Mr. Seawright. Right. Okay, Mr. Malinowski.
The next item, 20A, is being held in committee to get some legal input on this matter, find out exactly what we can do to address what Mr. Jackson, the maker of the motion, is asking for, what type of rules we can come up with. Item 20B, that one is also being held in committee. It was noticed that there are timelines in there from the staff point of view as to when items have to be done. And once it gets to the administrator, there is no timeline. So we're asking to get some feedback and information as to what actually has to be done once the administrator gets this, so that we can hopefully create a timeline so we don't come up with employee grievances up to a year later. So that's still in committee, and that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Next, we have the report of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee. Mr. Livingston.
Mr. Chair, we were extremely busy in our last meeting, so it's going to take a little time here.
Okay.
The first item, as we started over on
Atlas Road.
21A, regarding Atlas Road project, including your agenda package agreement with Norfolk Southern RR to review county plans to widen Atlas Road with county penny funds. Committee recommendations for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? Mr. Pierce.
And this would apply to all of these items. With the funds currently frozen, where's Mr. Perry?
Somebody, all these not necessarily money matter, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the funds available to move forward with these right now?
Rob Perry, Transportation Director. Yes, these were included in the projects that we forecast that go for 9 months.
Okay, good deal. That's all I need to know.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Any more discussion? Mr. Jackson.
This for all or just?
No, we're just item A.
Well, I was asking him, do we have funds for the whole, everything on the
Yeah,
list?
this is just item 21A.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we're just voting on 21A. Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor of the committee's recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Livingston.
Item B, 21B is related to the previous one. That is including your package of agreement with CXX Railroad to review county plans to widen Atlas Road and Richland County penny funding. Committee recommendation for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Livingston.
A reference to item 21C regarding Bluff Road, again, including your package, there's a tri-party agreement with DOT, CSX to widen Bluff Road with the Richland County penny funding. The committee's recommendations for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Livingston.
Item 21D, Three Rivers Greenway Project, IGA with the City of Columbia, including your package of agreement with the City of Columbia for the Three Rivers Greenway project, which states that the county will construct the project and the city will operate and maintain it.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Livingston.
Item 21E, reference Pine Road widening project. You'll see regarding the executive summary. You'd find the executive summary in your packet and propose typical section for the Pinewood Road widening project. Committee's recommendation for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Perry, the typicals shown on page 189, I think. 189. Those are the ones approved, the plan view? Or
Yes, the typical is, but then there's also in the executive summary, there's a statement of the recommendation that says the variance to that typical is that the two-way turn lane, the center turn lane would be removed from Bluff Road to Shop Road due to the flat traffic projections 20 years out. However, we would obviously look and ensure there were turn lanes for any adjoining roads where we saw major ingress, egress, like the truck traffic we talked about at the last Transportation Committee.
I've seen a 3-lane.
It is. The original Parsons-Brincroft study showed a 3-lane, travel lane each direction, center turn lane, and that's what was presented to the public, the display. And then subsequently, the recommendation presented to the Transportation Committee was to remove the center turn lane, and that's what's written in the actual recommendation. So it says that the variance to that typical that's shown in your agenda is to remove the center turn lane.
Okay, and I just want to talk to this for my concern. I know the general public wants to save money and everything, right? But when you have a section of a road with industrial parks, you have 18-wheelers entering the property back and forth, and you have only 2 lanes, and there's not a turning lane, right? It causes traffic problems. It doesn't matter how low the volume may be, right? But when you widen Pineview to 5 lanes, center lane and turning lane, then you have to slow less traffic to Bluff Road and make it 2 lanes instead of 3 lanes with a turning lane with a tractor trailer. It's gonna cause problems. So I'm not sure how we'd amend that to include it as a 3-lane versus a 2-lane, or at least have the necessary right of way. So if we have to go back later, we wouldn't have to purchase right of way and tear up the road, other roads and push the sidewalks out and cost more money.
And again, that's why I said we would make sure there were turn lanes where there were major ingress, egress for industrial parks within that section. So if there is a side road that we see that's got a lot of traffic, we'll still put a turn lane in.
Okay, and then putting the turning lane is just gonna almost cost as much as building it right the first time and building the 3.
That's Chris.
I don't know, it all depends on the length of the roadway and how many turn lanes you're putting in.
Okay, I just was hoping they view how much industries is along that stretch. I think there's only 2 houses on that road. Everything else is industrial, tractor. Right, so there'll be a lot of turning lanes, and in a proper design to keep putting turning lanes at every business is more cost than putting a 3-lane right for the first time. And with the sidewalk that goes with it, it helps. So I'm just bringing that out. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any more discussion? Okay, the committee's recommendation was for approval. All in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? That motion carries.
Mr. Chair, that brings us to item 21F. That's somewhat similar, but this is a typical regarding Shop Road widening project. The committee's recommendation for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
Item 21G, reference Shop Road Extension Phase 1 project. There's a request for a contract modification with City Smith. Included in your agenda package is a contract modification for $71,577.13 with City Smith for the Shop Road Extension Phase 1 project. Was for additional design work required by SCDOT to complete the construction plans. Without this work, the county would not have been able to design a new bridge at the additional cost of roughly $600,000. And this would have delayed the project. So committee's recommendation for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation.
71,000.
Any discussion? All in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Livingston.
Mr. Chair, item 21H is a very time-sensitive project due to federal funds that we're relying on with reference to North Main Street widening. Since it is $1 million in TAGA grant funding that directs the job to be bid in June and awarded in September, the committee's recommendation was to have staff bid the project as planned to protect the $10 million in TAGA grant funding.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion?
Sir,
Ms. Dickerson?
is there a match to this? What's the match for this Tiger grant?
That's a good question.
I wanna
It's
know.
a 80-20 match. So to get the 10 million, you'd have to have roughly two to do your match. But the overall project's a $45 million project. So it's got more than enough matching funds from penny funds.
How much the penny fund's gonna be for this matching fund? You said 20%?
Yes, ma'am.
20% of what? 40 million?
Of the $10 million Tiger grant.
Of the Tiger grant?
So the penny funds more than cover the match.
All right.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Livingston.
Item 21, Mr. Chair, reference Mill Creek Mitigation Bank. Staff provided an update, and there's no necessary action. Item 21J, resurfacing projects. Staff provided an update, reference resurfacing, there was no action. Item 21K, reference the TPAC role and responsibility. Staff recommend that council develop a description for a staff support person, not a full-time person, but a person from staff to fulfill the duties to support the TPAC committee. And there's no action for that, but because that'll come back. And then the item.
Chairman,
yes.
that was a staff recommendation?
I'm sorry, staff was directed, not staff recommendation. Thank you. Item 21L, a motion by Mr. Jackson was to, I forget what that motion was, but we took no action on that motion. Mr. Jackson, do you remember specifically what that motion was? Oh, reference, add another on-call.
Yeah.
And commit to no action.
And that was just information.
Okay, information on?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we took no action on it.
Mr. Chair,
Does that conclude your report?
I'm checking to make sure.
Okay,
I'm gonna.
I think it
Yes.
does. All right, thank you, Mr. Livingston. Ms. Dickerson?
Mr. Chair, did you say that item H was a very time, it says time since the project right here? Does that mean,
Move to reconsider.
Would help reconsider that one? Do you need?
No. If we get bids, we'll bring it back in September. I
Oh,
just
that's
want to
what
get
I
your
okay,
guidance.
okay, all right, okay,
All right.
that's good. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
I
Dickerson.
tried to make sure, and
Appreciate
but
it.
you forgot to tell me where it was going. I mean, I couldn't make it out from this packet, but I'll get with you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dickerson.
I wanna know how
Next
far
week-
that road
Mr.
is
Chairman.
going.
Yes,
On personal privilege.
Mr. Pierce.
I'd like to publicly thank Mr. Perry for his promptness, at least with me, when I have had issues, and I had one yesterday, and I wrote him last night, and I got a response last night, and I'd like to thank him for that publicly for assisting me and providing me information about our transportation program. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Perry, you do a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr.
Perry,
All right,
When I dream up mine, Mr. Perry, by 12:15, I'll send you an email.
No,
All right.
he emailed
Next
me
week-
back my 3 o'clock one, so
all
I
right.
did.
All right. Next, we have citizens' input. Must pertain to items not on the agenda. We have one citizen signed up to speak, Mr. Tony Forrester.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may I move that we have this gentleman set a time to meet with our video guy, Justin, and videotape this story and have it sent to us?
Yes, being taped.
How many more minutes do you have? You said you 2 apiece.
It's citizens' input. He can, if he wants to take,
No,
he
we
wants to
just
see
trying
us
to
every
figure
week.
out whether we can have him do it all at one time, keep him from coming down here every week.
All right.
Forrester. I live at 822 Woodside Avenue. And to continue my story, I was living on Ridgewood Avenue and drug dealers was at me, and I recall at that time I rented me a car because I was tired of people picking me up and dropping me off. And it escalated around my house with the drug dealers. So one night I left and I went to Richland County on Two Notch Road to tell the police there. And when I went in there, I was by myself, and a young lady had followed me in there. So when I walked up to the counter to tell the police that I wanted to report some drug dealers in where they were, I was trying to say it low so the people that had followed me in wouldn't hear what I said. So when I told him real low, he was angry because I think he's heard what I said, but he wanted me to talk louder. So I kept saying it again, and then he just got real mad, and I just had to say it real loud. I want to report drug dealers. When I said it real loud, the lady that was came in behind me, left. So I know what that was about. So the next night, I had a car. It was a rental car, and the drug dealer was out there calling me out. I was so scared at this time for my life that I knew of drug dealers, 2 young boys that I knew were drug dealers myself. And I called them that night to tell them to come and escort me to my car so I could leave, because they was escalating over there, because they weren't members of the gang Bloods, but they was drug dealers. So it's a mistake that I made, but I did call them, and they came, and one of them posted by my car, and the other one posted up the street at the drug dealer's house, saying because they had guns on them, and they told me to come on out. So I came on out, and I left. So that's my 2 minutes.
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
Chairman, I move for 2 extra minutes.
All right.
I want to hear.
2 more minutes.
Second.
And what did I leave off at? That the 2 drug dealers, okay. I got my car and I left, and I really felt bad because if something had went down, and young as they were, it would have been my fault. So I invited a young lady to stay with me, which I was staying by myself in the apartment. And she came and stayed there for me for about 2 months. And during these 2 months, things kind of died down. And the police kept, I had called the police a lot of times, and they kind of like knew me. And they was stop me and say, well, I got a job for your friend. Tell her I got a job for your friend. I said, okay, I'd tell her, because she didn't have a job, and I didn't know that she was on probation and she owed a lot of money. So things started happening around the house. And one night, when you have fear in your heart, you're sensitive to hear things, and and I heard a knock at the door. And I said, I hear somebody knocking. And I went to the door, and there was a midget. And when I came to the door, he took off running. And he took off running until he disappeared. And I said, and I was telling her what I just had seen. And she said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's all right. Don't worry about it. And I told my coworker the next day at the job, and she was saying, you be careful, because, what is she feeding you with? Because if she feeding you something like hash, that she could be putting something in your food. And I said, you know what? She give me something like hash every day. And I said, okay. Okay, that's my time.
Remember, you gotta remember where you stop the next time now. Write down hash where you stopped at now.
Hash, okay. With the hash, okay. All right, thank you, County Council.
You write a book. Thank you.
Seen it all.
Yeah, I'm on TV.
I know it. All right.
Enjoy something here.
All right. Executive session items.
No, we
Mr.
got-
Chairman,
No, we,
Items.
you know what, the,
What item?
what items for executive session?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have contractual matters. There are 2 items, solid waste services.
Oh, that's right.
And they relate to advance and waste management.
That's it.
Yep. Yeah, we don't have the public, the personnel.
The other matter, I
That was
think,
stayed
the
in
sheriff
committee.
addressed.
All right.
All right.
Move we go into executive
Do these
session
quick and dirty.
for those, for 2 waste management items.
2 solid waste items.
2 solid waste.
That's the motion on the table.
All right.
It's been properly second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?